Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Talk with Chavez. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. And today I'm going to discuss my AFC North predictions for the upcoming year and how they stack up compared to each other. By the end of these division by division predictions that I'm going to do, each division by itself, I'm going to do my own power rankings. If you guys would let me know your thoughts on that, just leave a comment in the comment section below. And let me know what you guys think. But this is one of the toughest divisions in football to gauge. You have the ultra-talented Ravens, but they have yet to have any postseason success the last 2 years with Lamar Jackson at the helm. Albeit he's only started a year and a half, but a first-round oust after the year they had last year, you get the feeling that can't sit right with themselves, with that reigning MVP and company. Ben Roethlisberger, though, is the lone savvy veteran leading his team to start this upcoming football season. Granted, his health and all that checks out. By the time they really get things started up, is it time for him to hand over the reins of the division for good? Or does the bearded gunslinger have some more left in the tank? Can Baker and the Browns finally prove why they were hyped up last offseason? Or is Joe Burrow the saving grace that the Bengals have desperately needed for about 3 decades now? All but one of these teams is going to be starting a quarterback that's 25 or younger. I'm here to discuss my perception on things, and let me know if you agree or not. I'm always open for discussion about any of the things I say on here or in person or anywhere, really. And I like to try to prove my point, but I know that I'm wrong sometimes. We're only human. So let's get to it, shall we? Let's start out with the reigning division champion Baltimore Ravens. I'll be one of the first to tell you that when Lamar Jackson came into this league, I was skeptical. I thought he was a little bit too slim to be running the ball like he does in the NFL. I was definitely wrong. His ability to make guys miss and throw a really nice football surprised me, only because I figured with the way he ran in college, he was going to take too many big hits. And not to compare too much, but I was a big Mike Vick fan. And I mean, they have similar playing styles, obviously. And I saw the beating that Vick took year in and year out, putting his body through a lot. Jackson seems to have learned from those mistakes that Vick made, though. And he looks poised to avoid injury-riddled seasons that Vick had to endure during his career. Lamar is now one of my favorite players to watch because he's even better than Mike Vick was. And he's just getting started. It's only his 3rd year, and he already has an MVP. It helps that he has an offensive coordinator and head coach that were willing to create a system just for him. That's something a luxury that Vic didn't really have during his career. Maybe if he did, things might have been a little bit different. But I am impressed with Jackson's ability as a passer more so than his running ability. We all knew he could run. There was never any doubt about that. But he proved last year that he can throw the rock pretty well too. Even though the Ravens only finished 27th in the league in passing offense, Lamar still had one of the best passer ratings in the league. They also finished number one in rushing offense. I think we all know that. They're a run-first team. So passing stats, as far as yards, completions, attempts, that's going to be lower because of how much they run the ball. They had almost 100 more rushing attempts than the next closest team last year. That's how much they run the ball. On top of that, they had the number one scoring offense. Now, I believe as Lamar progresses, so will their pass offense. They'll throw in more schemes, and route tree will be extended the more he progresses. I think that you'll see another leap from him as a passer this season coming up. But I mean, until teams can prove that they stop the run, why stop doing that? That's why they went and got another running back in the draft this year. I do think that teams will have a better idea of how to slow down the offense this year, but when you have number 8 back there behind center, it's going to be a difficult ask to ask any defense to stop them for 4 full quarters. I don't see the Ravens falling completely off this year. I don't see them doing as phenomenal as they did last year either, but they still have almost every starter returning from last season to this coming season, so they're not going to have much of a fall off. Maybe teams figure out a little bit more what they're doing or what they're trying to do because they have more film on Lamar now, but I don't see it being that big of a difference. And their defense came on hot toward the end of last year, but that trade for Calais Campbell this offseason was a stroke of genius. They needed help to stop the run, and they went and got it. I mean, we all saw what happened in that divisional round game against the Titans in the playoffs this past season. So let's see what the Ravens have up their sleeve this year. Their stats from last season on defense were respectable, but can this team overcome the mental block of being knocked out in the first round of the playoffs 2 years straight? The Ravens were 3rd in scoring defense and 4th in yards per game. They also excelled at taking the ball away, ranking 7th in the league with 6 fumble recoveries and 12 interceptions. So I think they'll be fine there since they didn't really lose too much this offseason, and like I said, gained another run stuffer, so see those numbers being about the same probably. And I believe it's going to be one of the toughest divisions in football outside of the Bengals, so that defense is definitely going to help. It's going to be a fight that goes all the way through to the end of the season, I believe. And I have the Ravens going 11-5 and winning the division in back-to-back years. Now, granted, the Steelers have Big Ben out there to start the year this year, and he's back to the rested, in-shape Ben. They should be a contender with that defense they have. Even if Ben doesn't have a huge year, they could ride that young defense to a deep postseason run. They did lose Raymond Foster to retirement, which I think will hurt the O-line a little bit. However, the Steelers are notorious nowadays for having a pretty decent offensive line year in and year out. I think Juju Smith-Schuster's development last year took a hit due to poor quarterback play. I mean, you can't really slice that any other way, and he had a bunch of injuries too that were nagging him throughout the year. He should have a bounce back season, and the decision for them to bring in Eric Ebron definitely help out to stretch the field and take a little attention off Juju, but also help Big Ben when they're in the red zone. I mean, having a big target like that is definitely going to help. 2 seasons ago, when he had a breakout season, I thought it was really good and showed what he's capable of. Eric Ebron, I mean. And I don't think that was an anomaly. I think he just had injuries last season and had Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball, who's not much of a big risk taker. But I believe Eric's going to have a decent year in Pittsburgh, considering their offense ranked 27th in points per game and 30th in yards per game. I think it's safe to say that even if Ben isn't 100%, he will still have the offense moving the ball more than they were last season. They also had a decent draft, considering they didn't have a first-round pick with the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade at the beginning of last season, but consider that trade a win for the Steelers. That trade helped them solidify that defense, and he's going to be there for years to come. They didn't trade a first-round pick to get him to not re-sign him, and especially after the season he had. Keeping Bud Dupree for at least another year was a great move as well. I mean, you got one more year of Big Ben playing, so why not keep all the pieces necessary to try and contend for a championship? And that's one more year for Bud Dupree to prove he's worth what he believes he'll get in free agency. I mean, he didn't have really great stats leading up to last season, and a lot of people look at players that perform in a contract year as they just wanted the money that year more than they wanted it before. And once they get paid, that maybe their production won't be the same because they'll be satisfied with their checks. Not saying that all players are like that or that is the case. Just it does happen. You hear guys talk about it all the time. It'll be hard to duplicate the defensive production they had last year when they ranked 5th in yards allowed and points per game allowed, as well as number 1 in turnovers and rushing touchdowns allowed. I think they will be fine. I don't think they're going to drop off much, but it's going to be hard to duplicate that again. Outside of their division matchups, it seems like they have a pretty decent schedule that won't test the defensive limits too much, other than a couple games possibly at the beginning of the year. I think their offense will be, if anything, if it is anyways, the problem that the Steelers have this season. I'm not saying that the offense is going to be terrible, but if there's a flaw on this team this season, it will be the offense. The defense is set up pretty nicely for the next few years still. So I have the Steelers going 10-6, clinching a wild card spot with a nice run in the second half of the season after a sluggish start in my projections. Unlike most people last offseason, I did not drink the Cleveland Brown Kool-Aid. I was telling people that those weapons will be no good without having an offensive line and a head coach that knows what he's doing. After they beat the Ravens early in the season, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe they'll turn it around here and now. But nope, I was right. And their season went down the tubes along with their head coach's career after just one season. The Browns brass then went about reshaping the front office and sidelines. And I personally think they're in a much better place this time around as opposed to last year. They have a much better head coach this time around that should hold everyone accountable, unlike the fiasco that unwound last year, week in and week out. Penalty after penalty. This team was the most penalized team in the league. Just no discipline on top of not having a halfway decent offensive line. Made it a long year for the second-year starter, Baker Mayfield. On top of having one of his top weapons, hurt all season, he was taking a beating himself, taking over 40 sacks. The new regime went right to work on trying to remedy the problems that plagued them last year, picking up 2 tackles, one free agency Jack Conklin signing, and the draft pick. I believe it was Jedrick Wills. But these were great moves on their part. It might take a half a season for them to get properly gelled, but it will still be better than the O-line that they trotted out there week 1, 2019. I don't know if David Njoku has a place on this roster after this season. It kind of seems like he's on his way out after this contract runs up, but everyone else on the offense is in their physical prime right now. The Super Bowl window is wide open for the Browns if they can pull it all together and utilize all of that talent that they have on both sides of the ball. They will improve on their 22nd ranked points per game and yards per game offense, I believe. With Kevin Stefanski as their coach, I think Baker is going to take it a little more serious this time around. And hopefully OBJ comes back healthy for them. Although the defense also ranked in the bottom third, their offense did them no favors last year, keeping them on the field more than they should have been. I mean, the best friend to a defense is a good offense. It gives them rest. It keeps them off the field as much. And the Browns offense just wasn't doing that for them last year. They had a decent defense pieced together. They just couldn't move the ball and keep the clock running in their favor. But letting Joe Schobert walk in free agency, I think might prove to be a vital mistake for that defense. The ultra-high motor and leadership he brought to the defense is going to be hard to replace. Never mind the fact that he's led the team in tackles the past couple seasons, and they didn't bring him back. They did bring in Andrew Sendejo, and they had a couple of draft picks, but and an Andrew Sendejo pickup will be a nice add for the team, and the young tandem that they have at corner is coming along nicely. They need somebody to fill that void at linebacker. Maybe they'll have someone step up in training camp and fill it up. I know they have guys on their roster, but who is going to fill that spot that Joe Schobert left behind? I have the Browns going 10-6 as well, competing for a wild card spot alongside the Steelers and a couple other teams I'm sure that I'll get to in my future episodes. This is where I believe the competitiveness for this division ends, because next is the Bengals. Now, I don't think the Bengals will be a terrible team again. I think they'll be competing this year, kind of like the Cardinals did last year. Not quite yet winning games with their new young quarterback, but at least competing in each game, having a chance to win towards the end of each game. Joe Burrow will eventually be an upgrade from Andy Dalton, but I don't believe in year one he will be. I personally would have kept them both and probably sat Burrow for a year instead of putting him behind a patchy offensive line and possibly hurting his confidence. But I'm not a GM, so alas, here we are, and it's Burrow's show now. Having Jonah Williams coming back off IR this year will definitely help the line, but I don't think it'll be enough to where Burrow won't be among the most sacked quarterbacks this upcoming season. Drafting T. Higgins was definitely a great move, especially while A.J. Green is still in the building to help teach the young gifted receiver. If A.J. Green and John Ross could both stay healthy for a full season, this Bengals receiver core could be fun to watch. They still have Joe Mixon out of the backfield too. Even after a sluggish start to 2019, the fourth-year back still rounded out the year with pretty decent numbers. The offense may light things up this year, or they might show flashes, but their defense will not help them. it's still not really fixed, and they might have to play in a few shootouts again this year. Hopefully they can get better there next offseason. They did add Mackenzie Alexander, a corner from Minnesota, but in my opinion, they definitely overpaid for a player that was in a very good system with the Vikings and benefited from having teammates that made it easier for him on his side of the ball. Geno Atkins is a beast, and putting DJ Reader with him will give offensive lines fits. But I just don't see them being able to produce enough pressures to make this a winning defensive unit as a whole. So I have the Bengals bringing out the end of the AFC North with another 4-12 performance. As long as they fix their defensive issues next offseason, they will be able to compete for the playoffs in coming years. Until then, they will remain in the league's basement. So this has three of the toughest rosters in the AFC this year, I do believe. The AFC North does. I have the Steelers starting the year off kind of slow at 3-4, but that's due to their scheduling at the beginning. It tends to get better later for them as far as non-division games go. After week 11, though, I have the Ravens leading the division at 8-2, and then the Browns and Steelers both tied at 6-4. I think the Ravens' schedule does the opposite of the Steelers and gets a little tougher toward the end, which is why I have them finishing off the season at 11-5, meaning they split the finish the last 6 games at 3-3. Still winning the division, but then the Browns and Steelers again tied at the end of the year at 10-6 each. And since I gave them the same division record as well, their playoff positioning would come down to conference record. And I have the Browns edging out the Steelers with a conference record to put them in the 5th or 6th seed, and having Pittsburgh slotted in the 6th or 7th playoff spot. Then there's the Bengals that'll be vying for another top 10 pick with another paltry 4-12 record, with a rookie quarterback and a not-so-great franchise from ownership down. You can't expect Joe Burrow to create miracles with this team just yet. Well, that's all for my AFC North predictions, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a like. If you'd like to see other videos like this in the future, hit that subscribe button. Any contributions given to this channel will go directly to making experience here the best one possible for you, the viewers. Don't forget, if you'd like to become a contributor to this channel, I do have a Patreon link, and that link will be in the description. Each and every dollar helps more than you think. Thank you guys so much again, and don't hesitate to give me your thoughts on how you thought this video was and how you think I could make your experience better here on this channel. Thanks again. Have a great day.